Today we're going to go through the standard algorithm for multiplying decimals. In the previous lesson we talked about adding and subtracting decimals using the rules that the decimal points would have to line up, we would bring down the decimal and add or subtract. When we multiply decimals, we do not focus on lining up the decimal points. We focus on lining up the end numbers, not the decimal points. After we line up the end numbers, our job is to count the number of decimal places that are to the right of the decimal point. We aren't counting the actual decimal points. Our third step is to actually do our multiplication. And then our last step that we will go through is we put the number of decimal places that we have accounted for back into the final answer from the farthest right, working back to the left. I'm going to work a few examples on the board showing you exactly what I mean. The first problem we have is 14.82 times 1.7. When I set this up, I'm going to line up my end numbers so that my 2, which is the end number here, lines up with the 7 here. Now what I want to do is do a quick estimate in my head like I did with adding and subtracting, so I have a good idea about what my answer should be. Therefore, I know that I have the correct answer and that my decimal point is in the correct spot. So 14.82 is about 15, 1.7 is about 2, and 15 times 2 is about 30. So I know that my answer should be right around 30. Now what I want to do is figure out the number of decimal places to the right of the decimal. 1, 2. I come out to the side, I'm going to write a little 2 to remind myself there's 2 there. I look to the right of the decimal here, I've got 1. So I know that at the end, I'm going to put 3 decimal places back in this answer. Now I go to step 3, which is multiply. 7 times 2 is 14. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 1 is 57. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 5 is 33. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10. I've completed the first row. I'm going to put a 0 in my placeholder here. I can get rid of the 7 if I like because I have used it. Now I go to my 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. I'm going to add up all my digits, staying nice and organized. 4, 9, 11, 4 plus 1 is 5, and 1 plus 1 is 2. Notice that right now, I do not have a decimal point in this answer. Here's where step 4 comes back in. I'm going to put the number of decimal places back in from the left to the right. I have 3, so I'm going to start on the farthest right-hand side. I'm going to work backwards. 1, 2, 3. My answer is 25.194. I said that my answer should be around 30, and it is relatively close, so I know that my decimal point is in the correct spot. Next problem, I've got 15.3 times 0.8. Again, the 3 is my last digit, the 8 is my last digit, so those have to be lined up. 15.3 times 0.8. It just so happens in this problem that my decimal points line up on their own. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick estimate. 15.3 is about 15. 0.8 is about 1, and 15 times 1 is 15, so my answer should be relatively close to 15. Now I'm going to come out to the side and figure out how many decimal places I have. I have 1 here. I have 1 here, for a total of 2 that I'm going to put back in at the end. Now I'm going to go to my multiplication. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 2 is 42. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12. I'm going to put a total of 2 decimal places back in, working from the right to the left. 1, 2. My answer is 12.24. I said it should be around 15. It is close to that, so I know my decimal place is in the correct spot. Example 3, I've got a whole number now. Now I have an option right now. I can change this 4 into 4.00 and multiply it by 8.28 and set it up just like that. I could do that. Now, my philosophy is why do that and create more math to do, more digits to work with these zeros? Chances are, if I've got more math to do, that's a greater chance of making a mistake. So in this case, I'm going to leave it a whole number. What I want to do here is put the bigger number of digits on top. So I'm going to put my 8.28 on top, and underneath it, I'm just going to put the whole number 4, lining up my end digits. I do not want to create more work for myself if I don't have to. Here, I look at how many decimal places I have. Well, first let's do a quick estimate. 8.28 is about 8. 4 is a whole number. 8 times 4 is 32, so I know my answer should be right around there. I've got a total of 2 decimal places here and none here. So I'm going to put 2 decimal places back in this answer at the end. 8 times 4 is 32. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 1 is 33. My 2 decimal places go back in from the right to the left. My final answer is 33.12. I said it should be right at about 32. I know my answer's probably correct. My decimal place is in the correct spot. Going to my 4th example here. Now I chose one that has a lot of digits. This one's into the thousands place, plus times a whole number here. I want to do the same thing I did in the previous example. Put the bigger number of digits on top, times 0.9. In this case, I want to go ahead and just get rid of the 0 too that's in front of the decimal, because what that's going to do is just create more math to do, and anytime I have more math to do, I have a better chance of making a mistake. So I'm going to ask myself, how many digits do I have here to the right of the decimal place? I have 3. I have a whole number here, so I have no digits, and I'm going to multiply. 9 times 2 is 18. 9 times 3 plus 1 is 28. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 2 is 20. And I put 3 decimal places back in at the end. My answer is 2.088. And in my final example, I have 3 different things that I'm going to multiply to get my product. I want to work these in steps. I want to do the first 2 and then multiply by the third. So I'm going to do this in 2 steps. The first problem is 3.2 times 2.8. Just so happens that my decimal points line up here, which is fine. Do a quick estimate. 3.2 is about 3. 2.8 is about 3. 3 times 3 is 9. I know my answer should be right around 9. How many decimal places do I have to the right here? I have 1 here and 1 here for a total of 2 I'm putting back in. Now I multiply. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. Plus 1 is 25. Put my placeholder down. Get rid of my 8 since I used it. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. I add everything up, staying nice and organized as I go down. 6, 9, and 8. Put my 2 decimal places back in, and I get an answer of 8.96. I said my estimate should be about 9, and I'm right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply the third number to get my product. 8.96 goes on top because it has a bigger number of digits, multiplied by 6.1. The 6 and the 1 are my end numbers, so I make sure those are lined up. Now I have 2 decimal places here and 1 decimal place here for a total of 3 that will go in at the end. Let's do a quick estimate. 8.96 is about 9. 6.1 is about 6. 9 times 6 is 54. I know my answer should be right around 54. Now let's go ahead and multiply. 6 times 1 is 6. 1 times 9 is 9. 8 times 1 is 8. My placeholder goes down as a 0. I've used my 1, so I can get rid of it. 6 times 6 is 36. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 3 is 57. And lastly, 48 plus 5 is 53. Add everything up. Put my 3 decimal places back in. 1, 2, 3. My final answer is 54.656. I said that my estimate should be about 54 so that I know that I'm correct. To summarize this lesson, the most important difference between adding and subtracting decimals and multiplying and dividing decimals is that when we add and subtract, we always want to line up the decimals, bring down the decimals, and add or subtract. When we multiply decimals, our number one goal is to line up the end numbers, not the decimal points. We have to account for the number of decimal places, and then once we multiply, we put those decimal places back in from the right to the left.